Spider-Man's bad. I gave my thoughts on this not very long ago, but I want to hear from one of the more well-established Magic the Gathering YouTube content creators what his thoughts and opinions are. And I got to be honest, for the most part, Seth is extremely genuine and honest when he gives his 2 cents. So let's hear him out.
Normally it is super easy for me to be critical of a Magic set that I don't think is very good. When Murders at Karlov Manor comes around, I have absolutely no problem memeing on the infinite detective ads or criticizing WotC for removing guilds, the thing players associate the most with Ravnica, from the plane altogether, or the set as a whole for being a pretty blatant attempt to try to do Hasbro with Solid and help them sell a crossover for Clue, one of their other games celebrating its 75th anniversary.
It does honestly seem like a lot of what we witnessed from Wizards of the Coast is just a means to a gain, you know? Like, oh, they're doing this, they're doing A and B so they can get to C. Nothing ever seems like genuine anymore. Let's keep going.
Or Ether Drift, with its random assortment of characters with seemingly little purpose or place, wacky racing around 3 planes that we didn't even really get to see, and the endless stream of cards and artworks featuring a character that Wizards is pretty clearly, and in my opinion, ham-fistedly, trying to turn into Magic's Pikachu and Lou.
Been saying this. I don't even know how long I've been saying that Magic's trying to bring in the collectability of Poke-esque kind of players and collectors. When it comes to Pokemon, I mean, there's probably more collectors than there are players. Let's call a spade a spade.
But one thing I've come to realize recently is it's a lot harder for me to be critical of Universes Beyond sets, even if I think that set is equally lackluster. I think a small part of this is that I'm just not a pop culture guy, so I'm always worrying in the back of my head that maybe I'm missing something.
I'm on the same page as Seth over here. I'm not a pop culture guy. I don't keep up on stuff. I don't know who the biggest actress is of our time. I couldn't tell you too many actors' names, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know what exactly is popping off with the younger generation anymore. Maybe I lost my touch. I don't even know. But let's keep it going.
It makes the set better than it is because I just don't get the IP. But the bigger reason is that Universes Beyond is just such a heated topic in some parts of the community that anytime there's any criticism about a Universes Beyond set, it automatically devolves into a never-ending battle over whether Universes Beyond should even exist at all.
Yes. In my opinion, and I think a lot of ours, Universes Beyond is just Wizards' blind stab at money and fulfilling, you know, shareholders and people who have their pockets exposed to whether or not Magic the Gathering makes money or not.
If I say something like, geez, I really don't like seeing IRL actors on the Doctor Who cards, you have 2 groups of people, with one group coming in to say, yeah, you see, Universes Beyond is killing Magic. I'm glad you're finally getting it. And then you have another group that comes in and see, wow, you're not a Doctor Who fan. You're just yucking someone else's yum, which is a phrase that I think is super overused and actually kind of cringe, but that's beyond the scope of this video. As such, I have found that passive indifference is the best way to handle Universes Beyond sets and to avoid the endless and, in my opinion, pointless arguments about whether Universes Beyond should even be a thing at all. But then, Spider-Man happened, and the more I think about and look at and dig into the set, the more I become convinced that Spider-Man is just not a very good Magic set. And honestly,
Said this a couple videos ago.
It should be thought of similarly to Ether Drift or Murders at Karlov Manor.
Oh, that's pretty brutal, but honest.
Today, I'm going to explain why I think the Spider-Man set actually kinda sucks, but also why this probably doesn't actually matter in the end. First, to head off some comments that I can see coming up in the future, let's start with 2 reasons that have nothing to do with why I think that Spider-Man is a bad Magic set, and those are, it's a Universes Beyond set, and I personally don't have any connection to the Spider-Man IP. Why both of those things are true, They don't make a Magic set bad. Look at Lord of the Rings. I have no connection to Lord of the Rings. Actually, I'm on the record being a Lord of the Rings hater, and I still think the Lord of the Rings set is one of the best Magic sets that Wizards has ever made. Or take Final Fantasy and Warhammer. Those are Universes Beyond sets that I personally have no connection to, and I still thought that both of those sets were amazing. As such,
I can 100% agree with this. Like, I don't have many ties or, bonds or whatever, fan favors, or whatever, any linkage to many of these pop culture themes Wizards of the Coast has been producing in sets lately. So my opinion is really not that biased. I want to know if the cards perform well. And I want to know if I'm spending my money and getting the best bang for my buck when it comes to that.
being a Universes Beyond set, or even being a Universes Beyond set that I really don't care about myself, doesn't make a set bad. In fact, as I mentioned in the intro, if anything, I think I'm more generous to Universes Beyond sets than I am to in-universe sets, just because I feel like I know Magic very well, but I don't usually know the other Universes Beyond IP. So if it's not my lack of personal connection to Spider-Man, or some overall hatred of Universes Beyond, why do I think that the Spider-Man set is a bad set? Let me lay out some points and walk you through the evidence. But first, a quick reminder, if you need some Magic cards, you can snag them from our sponsor Card Kingdom over at cardkingdom.com/MTGGoldFish. First, Spider-Man has...
I have purchased from Card Kingdom before, and I gotta say, they're not bad at all.
231 cards in the base set, and of those cards, 44 of them have Spider in the name. And many of them are some variation of Spider-Man. There's Cosmic Spider, Iron Spider, Scarlet Spider-Kane, Scarlet Spider-Ben Riley, Spectacular Spider-Man, Spider-Girl, Spider-Gwen, Spider-Ham, Spider-Island, Spider-Man UK, Spider-Man India, Spider-Man Brooklyn Visionary. I could go on, but you get the point. As someone who didn't even know that Spider-Man was a multiverse before spoiler season, what I was expecting from a Spider-Man set was Peter Parker, the one Spider-Man I actually know, versus iconic Spider-Man villains.
Right. I feel like I'm almost like an outsider looking in, and I think, not the majority, but I don't even know if you can agree with this. I don't know the extent of Spider-Man. I don't dig too deep into its lore. Honestly, I've not been I'm a huge fan of like heroes, people that save the day and come through, comic books. I grew up on them somewhat, but when it comes to like Spidey over here, Spider-Man, other than Spider-Man and maybe like what Seth's about to lay out here for us, I don't know too much other than some of the villains and the hero in the story, and that's it. And I was kind of hoping like that's all that this Spider set would be, but here's what we got.
Not a whole bunch of different versions of Spider-Man that I didn't even know existed. Maybe if you're a hardcore Spider-Man fan of the comics or whatever, it's cool to see all these kind of fringy Spider-Men, but as a Magic player, having 44 cards with a very similar name is just kind of confusing. If I just say, I play Spider-Man, I could be talking about 30 different cards. At first I wondered if this was actually because I don't really know Spider-Man, and if I would feel differently if I was a huge Spider-Man buff. But then I asked myself, what if this was an in-universe set? They had 40 different versions of Jace from...
Now that's a really good point. Yeah, how weird and strange would that be if we got 40 different versions of Jace Beleren? And in one of my most recent videos, I did mention, I think I edited it out because I'm like, nah, you know what? That would kind of suck. But I made the point like, hey, I think it's cool that they're making different, variations of what this main character could actually be in the storyline. But when they apply it to Magic cards 40 times, or, use that namesake to deliver a product, that's where it becomes a bit confusing and just watered down.
Around the multiverse. And I realized that if that was the case, I would have already memed and mocked that set into oblivion for just being absolutely absurd on its face. So I'm pretty sure it isn't a case of me just not knowing the Spider-Man IP. We've had standards before that had a few cards with a different name, a couple of Jaces, a few Chandras, but having 40 cards with a very similar name, not only in standard, but from the same set, is unprecedented. One thing we know for sure about the Spider-Man set is that it was originally supposed to be a small set, kind of similar to Assassin's Creed, but then this changed once Universes Beyond was brought into Standard, and it was turned into a much larger set. And we know this because Wizards actually has just said that's what has happened, and this seems to have led to a lot of what I would say are uninspired and kind of fringe designs to pad the numbers and fill out the set. My guess is the original set had a handful of super cool Spider-Man, and it was mostly designed to sell cool treatments to collectors and for Commander players to be able to build a Spider-Man deck.
A point I made. I said, wow, a lot of these special treatments, and special artworks, that they're giving to more scarce cards within the set are pretty nice. Like, I want to own playsets of them. And still, that does not change. I think it's a really cool thing.
And it was probably pretty good at that purpose, but then the end result, once it switched to being a big standard set, is, in my opinion, kind of an incomprehensible mess with very little rhyme or reason. If having 30 or 40 different versions of Spider-Man isn't bad enough, the second reason that I think the Spider-Man set is pretty bad is the entire set is going to have different names and different artwork for digital play on Magic Online and Magic Arena because Wizards couldn't or didn't, your guess is as good as mine, get the rights to use Marvel's IP on digital cards.
That blows my mind. I mean, my own personal thoughts on Arena, like the digital aspect. Greed really took over, and Wizards just started wanting way too much. Or is it Hasbro at this point? Because Hasbro bought outright Wizards. Is it just greed that took over? That's really killing our game that we all like. I don't know. But anyway, let's go back to Seth.
So now you don't only need to remember 40 different versions of Spider-Man. You'll also need to remember, if you're an Arena player, 40 different versions of not exactly Spider-Man for Arena as well, even though the cards are technically the same. It's just super awkward. Having popular formats like Standard and Modern that are played both digitally and in paper have a set that is mechanically the same but with different names and artwork between paper and digital just makes the game harder for people to play. If you only play Arena and I mention Spider-Punk on a podcast, there's a chance you have no idea what I'm talking about. If you only play paper and I make a Scions of the Spider deck on Arena, you might not even know what that card is or that it exists. It's confusing, it's inelegant, and just like the number of Spider-Man in the set, it has nothing to do with this set being Spider-Man or about it being Universes Beyond. Yes, I guess you could argue that if it wasn't a Universes Beyond set, Wizards would own the IP and this situation would never happen, which is true. But if Wizards did the same thing, let's say next spring's Lorwyn was Lorwyn in paper, but Win Lore on Magic Online and Magic Arena, and all the cards were mechanically the same but you had different names, I would hate it just as much, or probably even more, because at least in this case, there is some chance that Wizards tried really hard to get the rights to make digital cards for Spider-Man, but just couldn't do it no matter how much they were willing to pay. Next up, we have Synergy, and as far as I can tell,
if someone could break down for me, the digital rights versus the paper rights, I guess, in the comments. If anyone knows more about this topic, why Wizards couldn't obtain those, I'd love to hear about it. Is there some digital game that, Spider-Man's exclusive to or something that is hindering this progress with the digital world with Magic? I don't know. I'd love to hear about it, though, if anyone knows any more deets. But let's keep it going.
There's a shocking lack of it between Spider-Man cards and cards from the rest of Magic. The first thing I thought of when they announced there was going to be a Spider-Man set is that Spider fans, players who have a Shelob or an Ishkana Commander deck, would be eating really well thanks to all the new Spider support.
Yeah. That's another big point. Good. Why are we not seeing a crazy tick up with the Spider mechanics? I'll tell you why. No, Seth will tell you why.
The way that Magic design typically works is the game essentially builds on itself. Take zombies, for example. They have been black creatures and part of Magic since the very beginning in Alpha, and then 20 years later, we went to Amonkhet. And in Amonkhet, Wizards decided to move zombies into Orzhov. Moving zombies into white along with black allowed Wizards to innovate by making some white zombies, which is something we hadn't seen before, but keeping the black base meant that you could still easily play the Amonkhet zombies and in your existing zombie decks.
I remember when that happened. Very valid point. And honestly, I was a little confused at first when this first occurred with Amonkhet, but then like it kind of just made sense, and I'm like, sure, like I'm just gonna go along with it because I'm like, oh well, you know, Wizards knows what they're doing, and this is all gonna work out in the end.
For the first 30 years of Magic, spiders were mono green and to a lesser extent Golgari, so green and black. Sure, every once in a while there was a multicolor spider when we got to a multicolor set like Shards of Alara, for example, but really throughout Magic's history, spiders are primarily green cards. But many of the Spider-Man cards don't seem to take this context into consideration.
They honestly do not care whatsoever. Wait till you see this.
Actually, I think it's even worse than that. It's not so much that they didn't take the colors of Magic spiders into consideration, but it seems like Wizards almost intentionally ignored what it means to be a spider in Magic in favor of what it means to be a spider in Marvel. To me, the clearest example of this is Mary Jane Watson, a spider support card that has Selesnya hybrid mana, even though spiders in Magic are definitely not white cards.
Whatsoever. At least from the history of Magic the Gathering spider cards that have been printed.
I assume, based on my super tiny knowledge of Spider-Man, that this was supposed to show Mary Jane's goodness or purity or something, which probably makes sense within the context of Mary Jane's character in the Marvel universe.
Right, they're catering to the theme rather than the history of Magic. It's a strange world we're living in right now.
But it definitely doesn't make sense as a spider card in the Magic universe. If Mary Jane was a mono green card, it might not be quite as on point flavor-wise in the Marvel universe, but it would be about 10 times better in the Magic universe, which happens to be the universe that I live in and I care about. Now, this isn't to say that Wizards shouldn't have any flexibility in designing universes beyond sets. Having a Cosmic Spider-Man as a 5-color commander, even though spiders aren't 5 colors, or even Spectacular Spider-Man is a mono-white card since it's kind of a savior board type effect. That's fine, but as you dig deeper into the set, many of the design choices seem to favor what makes the most sense for Spider-Man in specific, rather than what makes the most sense for Spider-Man within the context of the game of Magic the Gathering. Well,
and yeah, very valid point. I think this is one of the biggest turnoffs to me to the Spider-Man set, was exactly what Seth just said.
Mary Jane is the clearest example of this. Much of the set to me feels oddly parasitic, with many of the cards really only synergizing with other cards from the same set, especially within the context of Commander thanks to its harsh color identity.
And we all know how crazily hard Wizards of the Coast pushes Commander cards. It's in every single standard set release, always.
And this isn't to say that Wizards shouldn't consider the flavor of what fits well in the Marvel universe when they're designing a Spider-Man card, but that they should also consider the 30-year history of Magic the Gathering and how the Spider-Man card fits within the context and tradition of the game itself. And
yeah, they're losing a lot of their longtime player base. That we're just like, what is going on here anymore? Like we're not understanding what is happening to the game that we have been a part of for so many years. It's like Wizards is just fading away from it and just going with whatever they believe is going to put up dollar signs, or fill people's wallets anymore.
Me, it just feels like this didn't really happen with Spider-Man, at least not in a meaningful way. Fourth, despite switching from being a small set to being a larger set, the set likely isn't going to be very good for traditional draft, and this is evidenced by the fact that the Pro Tour that happens on Spider-Man release weekend is going to be featuring Edge of Eternity's draft, a set from 2 months ago instead of Spider-Man draft, and also Wizards creating the 2-pick draft format, seemingly at least in part to try to make Spider-Man at least sort of work as a draft format. We also know from Wizards that the original smaller version of Spider-Man was supposed to have 0 commons in it, so when they expanded the set up to over 200 cards, they needed to fill out the common slot in booster packs, and as such, birthed such iconic cards as Guy in a Chair, Hot
Guy in a Chair. I get it more.
Dog Cart, City Pigeon, and Bagel and Schmear. Considering that the Spider-Man multiverse is massive enough to give us something like 40 different versions of Spider-Man from different universes and timelines, I have to imagine that somewhere in this huge multiverse there are some more inspired and less goofy common designs hanging out somewhere. Well, my infamous dude in his garage eating a sandwich commander deck is, well, eating this set. In a lot of ways, I kind of wish it wasn't. Let's put this all in the context of an in-universe set. Let's say that Wizards printed a Ravnica set. They had 40 different versions of Jace split across the color pie, with most of them not working with or in Commander even being legal to play with.
Try, if you can, to imagine Jace in every color. Not just blue, but every color. They did try some Phyrexian stuff recently where Jace died. Didn't he get spliced with another color? Probably, sure. But imagine Jace in white or red. Make it make sense, right? Make it make sense.
Old existing versions of Jace, and they decided to release this set. So Magic Arena and Magic Online had mechanically the same cards but with different name and artwork, and they stuffed this set full of meme filler designs and didn't even really bother to make it work in traditional draft. To me, that sounds like a absolutely horrible set fueled by a bunch of very questionable choices, and as far as I can tell, that's essentially the set that Spider-Man is, just with a bunch of super cool Spider-Man art and treatments thrown in on top of it. In the past, I think I've mostly rated Universes Beyond sets on
lazy. It's lazy. Spider-Man's been lazy.
On a curve and sort of given them a pass for being their own separate thing found in secret lair drops and commander precons and the occasional modern set. But now that Universes Beyond is not only in standard, but a full half of standard sets, I think it's only fair that I grade a Universes Beyond set just like I would an in-universe set. Wizards has made it clear that Universes Beyond is Magic, so I think it's only fair that we grade Universes Beyond sets just as harshly as we would any Universes Within set, and I gotta say, at least for me, Spider-Man gets a failing grade, at least on the same level as Ether Drift or Murders at Karlov Manor.
Yeah, it's up there. It's up there with those. It's really that bad.
And in some ways, it's even worse than that, because at least Ether Drift and Murders of Karlov Manor had draft formats that function for traditional draft and the same versions of cards in your booster packs and paper and on Magic Arena. Now, I should say, if you're a massive Spider-Man fan, don't let my opinion of the set get you down. If you love the set and you love all the cards, that is awesome.
Like I said, the comic book treatment on some of these cards, like the full art comic book treatment, it's amazing. I have no debate. I have no debacle. I have no argument with that. I've said from the very beginning, it's amazing. But I feel like that is one of the major pushes that Wizards is banking on.
I'm someone who likes a lot of obscure music that no one else seems to like, so having someone say that Ween or Amigo the Devil or Captain Beefheart sucks doesn't make me like the music any less, and me thinking that Spider-Man is a bad set shouldn't make you like it any less. It's also worth pointing out that me thinking a set is bad doesn't mean I'm not going to do my best to enjoy that set.
Right, good point. As much as we may disagree with Wizards of the Coast choices, it doesn't mean that we can't have fun with the cards. Right.
Even though I thought that Ether Drift was essentially a meme and that Murders of
Ether Drift is still garbage, and so is
Karlov Manor was just downright bad, I still enjoyed building around and playing with a lot of the cards from those sets, and I'll do the same with Spider-Man. I love the game of Magic, and I've lived through plenty of bad sets in my day.
Dragon's Maze could be arguably set aflame. Every box.
And adding one more to the list, be it Spider-Man or an in-universe set, isn't really going to change anything. There's even some individual cards in the set that I actually really like Hydro Man and Mr. Negative and Spider-Punk. So despite the set itself kind of being a discombobulated mess, there are some really cool cards in there. Now that we've talked about why I think Spider-Man is a bad set, let's get into the most important part of all this, which is how these problems can be fixed in future sets.
Seth, I love your optimism, but I don't think Wizard of the Coast is going to follow suit.
I love Magic, and that's why I think it's actually important to be critical at times. It's not to vent or meme or to complain, but to give constructive and actionable feedback that Wizards can use to improve the future of a game that I love. First, I should say I'm not especially worried that future Marvel sets are going to have the same problems as Spider-Man, because I really truly believe that many of Spider-Man's problems come from the set being shifted late in the process, from being a commander set to a standard set, and from being a small set into a large set. And presumably, this isn't going to happen with future Marvel sets, which should solve a lot of these problems all by itself.
My own beliefs, none of these pop cultures should be a part of the main standard set at all.
Speaking of last-minute changes,
They shouldn't be a part of standard, period.
this is easily the biggest thing that Wizards can do to avoid printing another Spider-Man style set in the future. I know this is probably easier said than done because in the real world, sometimes things change for reasons outside of your control. But still, we've seen time and time again that last-minute changes tend to cause problems. Just look at infamous card designs like Skullclamp and Nadu, which were basically changed at the last minute and then never tested properly or even at all before being released. Second, even Universes Beyond sets need some sort of lore or narrative. Pretty much every Magic set has at least a little bit of narrative and lore mixed in. Even other Universes Beyond sets like Lord of the Rings or Final Fantasy, which somehow managed to come across as coherent despite featuring 15 different games, and is definitely a testament to Wizards' design ability, tell some sort of story. Spider-Man, on the other hand, to me just feels like a random assortment of Spider-Men. Maybe this would feel different if the set launched alongside the delayed and upcoming Spider-Verse movie. Maybe it would have made more sense in that context, but still, as it is currently, the set just feels super scattered and lacking in story. Related to this, one set featuring too many cards of the same character makes the set worse and not better. While we've talked a lot lately about things like complexity creep and power creep, one creep that we haven't really talked about is character creep. Lately, we've been getting more and more versions of the same character in a single set.
And I did make an argument. I think I got rid of it, though, during editing process, because I was like, maybe I'm wrong on this. Everything is great in moderation. But once you turn that valve into a full flow, there lies the problem.
Well, this isn't brand new. Core Set 2020 with 3 versions of Chandra stands out as an example from the semi-distant past now. Traditionally, most sets will only have one version of each character, but we've seen this change recently, with Lord of the Rings having several versions of Sam and Sauron and Frodo, or Final Fantasy having a few Clouds and Sephiroth and Tifa, and even Edge of Eternity's got in on the action with multiple versions of Tanic to show the growth of the character.
Yeah, but 1, 2, 3, 4, versions, not the end of the world. Which I'm on that side of the fence. 40? Houston, we have a problem.
I actually don't mind having a few versions of the same character in a set, especially if there's a reason for this, like there was with Tanic. And in Universes Beyond sets in specific, where Wizards probably only gets one bite at the apple, it makes even more sense to print a few versions of iconic characters, because it's not like Wizards can just print another Frodo or Sephiroth in a future set. But Spider-Man just takes this way too far. Not only does having so many different spider people in the set make the set feel incomprehensible from a narrative perspective, but it also makes the Spider-Men themselves feel less special, which I assume is the opposite of what you want from a...
It's like they ran out of ideas with the Spider-Man, and they're just like, well, let's just throw Spider-Man on 40 different cards. We can always figure out something with that, and we'll just run with it. People will buy it. No one cares. Problem. We do care.
set named Spiderman. Also, Wizards needs to remember that we're playing Magic the Gathering, and Universes Beyond needs to sit within the game's 32-year history, and there should be a focus on making Universes Beyond sets synergize as much as possible with past in-universe sets. Getting a spider set with so little support for iconic Magic spiders just feels super awkward. It sort of makes the Spider-Man set feel like it's its own thing, set off on an island somewhere.
Right, and that's why these Universes Beyond sets need to get the hell out of standard, and they need to be a part of like this, like the Lord of the Rings set. You know, Lord of the Rings wasn't standard. Stick to that. You know, just drop, and it was still successful. They still sold a boatload of product, all the boxes they wanted to, satisfying their shareholders, and that's the main goal, right, Wizards? So why don't we just stick to that and stay the hell out of standard?
Rather than being a cohesive part of the greater game of Magic. And now that Universes Beyond is such a large piece of Magic, I believe the goal should be to assimilate these other IPs into the greater game of Magic. Fifth, cards must be the same on digital and in paper. Having a single card with 2 pieces of art in 2 names, depending on whether you're playing on Magic Arena or in paper, is just super confusing and bad for everyone, but it's especially bad for new players.
Yeah, talk about confusion. Oh my gosh.
How do I, with a straight face, tell a new Magic player that was brought into the game specifically by Spider-Man that they should go learn on Magic Arena, where they'll get to play with Scions of the Spiders? And if these players are playing the game specifically for Spider-Man, why would they do that anyway? I feel so strongly about this one that I say if a future partner for Wizards refuses to let Wizards use their IP in both digital and in paper, Wizards should just straight up walk away from the partnership. That's how bad I think it is to have different versions of cards in paper and in digital. Finally, last but not least, limited matters. I've met several people recently who have told me that limited is the only form of Magic, the only format of Magic that they are enjoying currently.
I hear this often too in the comments section.
Thanks to all the upheaval in constructed formats over the past few years. One of the goals for every single standard set should be for that set to be fun and playable in a traditional 8-player draft, because that's the only way that some players interact with the game. Anyway, those are the reasons that I think Spider-Man is a bad Magic set, and also the ways that Wizards can fix this problem in the future. But as I mentioned in the intro, I'm still not sure that any of this actually matters.
What are your guys' thoughts? Are these themed sets, these pop culture sets, ruining Magic? Should they stay out of standard? Should they be a part of standard? Should Wizards of the Coast just do whatever the hell they want and you just turn a blind eye to it? Like, I gotta hear. What are your thoughts on this? Great take by Seth over here with MTGGoldFish. As always, he likes to take a deep dive, and I do appreciate what he does over there. But now it's your turn. What are your thoughts? Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joey Moss, Bad Boy Gaming.